Welcome to On the Line with Jim Pyne. I'm Jim Pyne. This episode is brought to you by PLS Aviation. Private aviation, perfectly executed. Now let's get on the line. Welcome to On the Line with Jim Pyne. Today's guest is one of the most respected leaders in the National Football League. He's a Super Bowl champion, has coached in 3 Super Bowls, built one of the greatest defenses in NFL history with Seattle's Legion of Boom, and a great guy. Please welcome Washington Commanders head coach Dan Quinn. Dan, welcome.
Jim, thanks for being on, man. It's training camp time, so I would think your body is ready to get going during this time of year.
That's right. A little muscle memory, right? Or
You've been
arthritis
through a
kicking
few of
in.
them. Yeah.
That's right. No, good times. It's a great time of year. I got 2 sons, same thing, playing football. One's in high school, one's in 8th grade. So I kind of walk around the field, help a little bit with the linemen. One guy's a quarterback, the other guy's playing tight end. So I don't mess with my guys, but I help out where I can.
Right on, man. Well, it's cool. We're about to get started here as well in Ashburn, and there's nothing like it. It's a time to connect. The team comes together quite a bit during this time, and so that's maybe when some of the best leading takes place, player to player.
That's right. That's right. Fond memories of those training camps and the times of obviously practice, but then in the dining hall, whatever they were in, hotels, dorms, whatever you're staying in, it's always a good time. I feel like as a grown man going back to college sometimes or living like that, that's always good. It's good for the guys to get a break from their normal life, I guess, to get right back into football. So with that, Coach, sorry to interrupt. Is one of the cool things. One of the first times I got to know you was, years ago. You had just gotten a head job in Atlanta, and I was very impressed with. You bought some aviation hours and stuff, and you had told me you were looking to go around and fly and see some former great coaches and try to get some wisdom. You were investing in yourself. I just want to see it. Who did you go see then, Coach?
I first saw, probably the first coach that I saw that had been retired was Joe Gibbs.
Wow.
And so went to Charlotte up to, where he has the program there. And so I spent the day, and he was a guy that took different quarterbacks, Jim, to the Super Bowl with Joe and with Doug, and, just in different ways of how they did it. So I thought, what a great example of somebody to go. It's not just one way or one system to how to go about it. I went up to New York to visit Bill Parcells. And for me, that was somebody that I enjoyed watching growing up in New Jersey, and saw what coaching would look like and what that would seem. And so he had such a standard, and I just had admired so much about their team's identity. And lots of coaches talk about an identity and what does it look like. And so for guys like Parcells and Gibbs to share that back to me, that was a big deal. And then through the years, it's kind of expanded, from football into the NBA, we're all dealing with players and how to go. And so I've kind of, transitioned some into, visiting with current coaches, in the NBA. And that's been good too, Jim, to share ideas and insights and messaging about how to motivate players. And it's been really cool, man.
That's awesome. I mean, you talk about 2 legends, Bill Parcells, Joe Gibbs. That's great. I'm very impressed when you did that. And I thought, wow, this guy's going to be something special. And you've turned out to be a special coach. And I'm really happy for all the success you've had. And life's full of challenges and stuff. But I guess, was there any tidbit from Parcells or Gibbs that you said, hey, you left a meeting, you said, I'm going to coach something different now. Now that they just told me that, I'm doing this now. Was there anything you can think of?
It was so unique in both of them because they were both so open to about, what it would look like and how they would go. And that's what's fun about our game. Sometimes things change a lot and there's other times not so much. So I'd ask, for Coach Gibbs, what were you looking for in a quarterback, as you were going through it? He said, Dan, I wanted to see when we're evaluating somebody, what did it look like, their completion percentage on deep balls. And I thought that was so specific for an explosive play when the man-to-man coverage showed or one high safety showed, and this was the shot that they would go, what was their accuracy on that? And I thought, man, what great insights to say, not just, how arm strength somebody had, but the specifics to it. And then really then he was talking about toughness, that person has got to be in the huddle. They got to get back up. They got to show and demonstrate that toughness. But that really stuck with me about, the deep ball accuracy. And it was small things like that. Or I can remember visiting with the Hall of Famer GM Ron Wolf, and I'd asked him to come down to training camp one year in Atlanta. And I said, hey, would you mind going through the top 2 quarterbacks in this year's draft? I just wanted to see what you saw in one versus the other. And as we were watching the tape, he, there was an interception. So he said, hey, wind that back. And I'm thinking he was thinking it was going to be a release or what was the read. And I said, what were you looking for? He goes, I wanted to see how hard he was going to chase to make the tackle. And like, so he was speaking of like, at that position, man, you better be one hell of a competitor. So that to me was something that like really stuck out to me. Talking to, up to Parcells, it was really about the identity. And that's a lot of where my questions were and what that would look like and what would the practices be and how would you take away something that a specific team does well. Okay, Dan, how are you going to take that away? That is not going to happen in this game. And then going after matchups. And he was, a good bit of that lunch was talking about how's your club compared to the division? What matchups are you stronger? What matchups are you weaker? And so he really thought strategically as opposed to, hey, this is our system. This guy's got to make the play. He was very conscious of that. And I thought, man, that's some upper level thinking in a significant way. So those are just two examples, man. On that day, I probably could have stayed with both of them for the month. And, they would have had to kick my ass out. But there's a lot to gain from sharing that information as coaches. And now I try to, give that information back when we're developing other coaches, whether it's here or elsewhere. And we get a good opportunity to go do that.
Sure. No, that's great stuff. I mean, Bill Parcells, I had the fortune to sit with him a couple of times. Just an intense guy with an amazing presence. And, you kind of want to, we said, we're going to do this. Yeah. Okay, coach, that's what we're doing. And
Yes.
very successful guy. And hats off to you for seeking that knowledge. I think that's stuff that, hey, memories you'll never forget no matter what, but that had to teach you some things.
Yeah. I think if you go back and you want to like, hey, what's some things that you'd want to do differently or go back? Those are things whenever you're starting off onto something, man, ask some guys who've had some wisdom. Doesn't mean you have to do it that way, but it does give you a different point of view and another perspective on something. And so you take a nugget like that from a guy like Gibbs who, hey, what's the guy doing on, when he has to throw a deep ball on a shot that's only going to happen a few times a game. What happens when that play takes place? I said, all right, that's one that stuck with me.
That's great. One thing talking about too, I always, on the show, I like to talk to people about transition, right? So I think one of the things as a former player, I played, I coached, and it was on the business side, but I see a lot of former players who struggle with transition, right? What's next in life after a full stadium, signing autographs, the crowd's cheering to nobody's cheering, you're kind of thrown out in the street. How do you reinvent yourself, transition? I know for coaches, same thing, right? They have a similar thing, but for you specifically, Dan, you were a head coach, then you were a coordinator, now you're back at a head coach. How do what's some keys and advice you give guys that, hey, we're always reinventing ourselves and transitioning? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. What I did, Jim, I'd been head coach in Atlanta for 6 years and got let go during the 2020 season. And that first time, your business listeners might think of it as a 360. I just thought of it as, hey, what would be a blind spot report? What were some things that I could do differently? And so I hired somebody that would, talk to former players, current players, maybe ones that I had let go. And I didn't want anybody's name on it, Jim. I just wanted, what were some things that we thought could do better? What were some things that we could do differently? Knowing that on the next lap, I'm not just going to say, well, I would do the same exact thing. So I wanted some insight about, leaving Atlanta, knowing that in my next chapter, I went to be a coordinator again at Dallas to say, all right, what could I do differently? And then make sure I could apply those things. And what was nice is I'm able to do it some there in Dallas and now again here in DC. So that is a big thing because that transition, man, in any profession, everything's scheduled out. This is what you're doing. And then all of a sudden, man, you're, throwing a sucker punch and you're like, all right, how do we react now? Knowing that adversity is going to come. I wanted to find out what my blind spots were. And then if there's a way to address them, then I would.
Great. No, that's very, very smart. You're a very intellectual guy. And it's great. I mean, it was seeking the knowledge and the self-reflection, look at yourself and be critical on yourself that, hey, what can I get better at? How, we're always getting better, growing. What can you do? That's amazing.
Exactly.
That's great.
Because sometimes when you're the leader, you don't get a lot of feedback.
Right.
And this, in business to say, you don't get that. So you want to seek it and you want the information from the other people that you work with. Sometimes you just want a different point of view. I want the pros and the cons. So like that feedback is critical. And so as a coach or a leader, you want to make sure that you have people there that are giving you that feedback. And sometimes it's just to make sure, hey, this is the best way that we're doing something. So let's dig in on it and make sure of that.
Sure. And being approachable, to your point. I think CEOs, executives, head coaches sometimes aren't approachable. They're there's some egos there and stuff. But yeah, being a guy that my door's open and really it is open. Come on in, let's talk. Let's all get better. And let's help each other. And that definitely I can see that with you. And taking a turn too here. So, enough big name guy that you worked with, I remember down in Miami, Nick Saban, right? Head coach. Talk to me about his time in Miami. What did you learn from Coach Saban?
Yeah, I thought it was like going to like grad school for football, man. It was awesome. It was such a clear philosophy of how things were going to be done, the organization. This is how we would do. So like in a 4-year span, I'd worked 2 years with Nick Saban, who had come from LSU to go to Miami, and then I went to the Seattle Seahawks with Pete Carroll, and these two guys had been like on top of college football, like at the very highest spot. And what was so interesting, Jim, is these two guys were so clear in how they want to get down. This is how the program's going to be run. Like philosophically, everybody knew what it was, how it would go. They did it in their own authentic way. And so I thought, man, what a great learning lesson for me, that as good as these guys were, they were truly authentic to the way they said their messaging, they ran their program. Nick wouldn't have done it Pete's way, and Pete wouldn't have done it Nick's way, and they wouldn't have been as successful if they had tried to copy somebody else's personality or style. But their consistency to do it again and again and again, like Pete Carroll with competition, like he wouldn't back off it. Like it was every day, could we compete and find it? And he just never backed off of that. And I really respected that, Jim. And same thing with Nick, the standards of practice and execution. Wasn't going to back off it and allow, something that was substandard to be recognized as it was okay. And I admired that in both of them. And again, the biggest takeaway I got was, and also do it in your sane language for yourself. So I couldn't have been Nick Saban or Pete Carroll. I had to do it in my own way. But it was very important to be authentic to how you say it and you do it. Like, let's face it, man, you were a pro player for a long time. Players see through the BS quickly. And if you're not being who you are, they're going to know it. And so it better be authentic to how you coach on the best of days, the hardest of days, and making sure that, like, hey, when I come into work, this is the expectations that are going to be there every day. And as a ball player, you didn't want, to have to be riding the roller coaster, or how's the coach going to be today? And if you had somebody that was consistent and tough in their standards, I thought that got the best out of people.
Sure. And Nick, arguably the greatest college football coach of all time, and one of them, right? So,
yes,
how do you, and I remember him. What do you think? In the NFL, he was there, but it didn't go as well as that. But what do you think that was? A little different. He's better with the younger guys than, the older guys, or what are your thoughts?
I think if he had stayed, he would have done great too, man. There's some like small things. All right, let's go like interviewing somebody for a position. He might have interviewed 6 people. But it was to find the best person, but it was also to gain information and knowledge. And so it was as simple as going through an interview. Could we learn something? Could we find something out here? Could we get better in an area that we didn't know as much about? And I thought, man, what a hell of a competitor's mindset in that way. But I think whether he was coaching in, if he had stayed in pro ball, I think it would have worked out great. Obviously, like it was the right call to go to Alabama at that time, but he could have such insight on how to control a game. He had great feel, Jim, offensively, defensively. Like he was constantly learning and pushing. And I think that's the measure of a really good coach. What was once good, hey, this has to be tweaked and adjusted. And it was just like relentless in like the pursuit of like getting better.
Sure. And now switching gears, Seattle, one of the greatest defenses in NFL history, the Legion of Boom. Why was it so special? What happened out there? How'd you put it? You mentioned Pete. You were there. How'd you all put it together? What was the secret sauce?
At the very and we did it way differently than in Atlanta. So the scheme was less complex, but these guys knew it inside out. If you had asked almost any one of them to go diagram it, draw it, they knew it inside and out. And that type of knowledge allowed them to play really fast. Decision making was critical, that they could, think quickly on their feet. And then you combine that with a group that was kind of coming on their way up together, Jim, and they were competitive to push one another. The practices there were really competitive and strong. And so we worked right on that edge of being like almost out of control. but it was at that edge that we got really good because we pushed ourselves into that space. And they had a good connection as a defensive crew, but it was really, like some leaders like a Cam Chancellor, Richard Sherman, Bobby Wagner that had such high standards about how they wanted to like battle for one another. It was really rare and a really fun group to coach.
Yeah, you mentioned I had him on my list here. Cam Chancellor. I went to Virginia Tech. You go Hokies, right? He's a Hokie. I remember watching him in college, and you get a lot of Hokie fans that are Commander fans. I'm sure Northern Virginia up there. So
Yeah, 100%.
that's a big part of the country. But he was a great player at Virginia Tech. Big physical guy. I think he was drafted late though. He fell in the draft a little bit, and you
Yep.
guys got him out there and obviously developed him, and he did what he did, and he had a great run, right?
Like so many good players that you played with who were teammates, like he was an exceptional teammate, but he had found that one thing that he had that like, man, could he like absolutely demonstrate this physicality. And so like coming across the middle, we played so much zone that he was able to have vision to the quarterback and absolutely break on the ball to go. So we played him a lot near the line of scrimmage. He was about 235 pounds and 6'3", so he was like a big linebacker, and man, could he hit. And so the physicality, the disruption that he caused, but also like high standards for one another to his teammates. He was like an incredible leader. So he was the entire package: toughness, physicality, the knowledge, dependability, all those things. But that physicality, that's the spot that like you wanted to think twice, on that over route as a tight end, knowing that like old 31 might have been right there on that hash waiting.
Yeah, Hokies, man. He had a great job. You did a great job with him, and unbelievable. And one thing you mentioned too, Coach, your coaching tree, very very impressive. Stands out to me. I had spoken to Andy Reid yesterday, actually doing a similar thing. He's had a great coaching tree too.
Yes.
27 years as a head coach. Now I coached for 3 years in the NFL and with some different guys, different staffs. But I remember going to stuff and meetings, and there were meetings that said you couldn't come to the meeting. Like they didn't want me to learn, wouldn't let me grow. Like it was like the oddest thing. But so hats off to you. Want to get your take on it. But to help a man to help another man, especially in a big business like that, no ego. You're a very humble, good guy. That's to be commended because that's rare too. And it shows you have 8 guys that were on your staff. A, you're hiring great guys. B, you're developing them. And then you're letting them flourish, and you're giving them power to do that. You're teaching them, and then they go on, and I'm sure you're supporting them. You're happy for that they've gone and got head jobs. But what do you do there, Coach? And congratulations on all that.
Yeah, I think that's our responsibility to develop the coaches, just like the players. If we're developed of the players, we have to be that for the staff as well. And so we take a lot of pride in how to develop one another as coaches. There's not like in college, I go to a convention and talk to other coaches. So you really have to dig in to learn and grow, and you have to push people. You have to give them feedback. You have to have high standards for that. But I do see myself as a developmental coach. What would we all give, for somebody to look after us and say, especially on your way up, like those first 3 years after you're done playing to start coaching, to say, here, come on, Jim, let me show you how to do this. Like we would give anything to do that. And so if you really want to build, a crew that's strong and wants to dig in together, it's moments like that you allow people to grow. And I think sometimes the best ideas, go horizontally, not vertically. I can imagine you were sitting in some meetings thinking, I know a better way we could do this, but no one was willing to listen into that space. And it doesn't mean you have to do it, but having another point of view helps. And so I just think that's important for us to take the time, go through it together. And so we do some coaching summits together. Sometimes I'll bring some retired coaches in. Might be some coaches from another sport, just to give new insights about how we could look at something different. Most of it around development of players and around as coaches too. Could be technology. I want to present better. I want to teach better so the players have better understanding. And so what does a meeting look like without all lecturing, but having the players interact as well? And so that's what we try to develop as the coaches, like how elite can they become as teachers, both on the field and, in the classroom. I imagine you as a player, like when you're in the game or at practice, you don't need a lot of feedback. It has to be direct, and here's what it is, and here's what I saw, as opposed to taking too long and too wordy. So I think the words that we use as coaches, it is critical.
Yeah, absolutely. John Harbaugh and the Harbaugh family there, they said, great idea has no rank, right? So to your point, right? That's That's for sure. And then, the mother of all learning is repetition. I remember Bill Muir. I coached with Bill. That's what he said. So to your point, like I coach some of the youth stuff, and we're out there. Some guys are just talking too much. I'm like, get them reps, reps, reps.
Yeah.
Like that's how you learn reps. Either good or bad. We'll coach them up later. We'll film it and look at it later.
And
But you know
some
what
of
I
the
mean?
O-line coaches, Jim, are so detailed that I found through the years, some are the very best at developing players over and over, the footwork, the technique, the leverage. And that's what makes kind of coaching so much fun. If you were on a staff, you'd want to learn from Bill Muir at whatever position you were coaching. You might have been a linebacker coach, and I want to hear how Bill Muir is teaching. I had been at Seattle. We had a line coach by the name of Alex Gibbs, and then it was Tom Cable. These guys taught zone blocking like an absolute G. I remember just wanting to sit in their meetings and learn and like grow from them, knowing this is some of the best teaching that's going on in our game at offensive line. And so, like, why wouldn't we dig in for one another?
Sure, sure. Bring up some names. Kyle Shanahan. So Kyle and we worked together. He was a new coach on John Gruden's
Yeah.
staff in Tampa. We were there, and he was a young guy coming in, quality control. I was a quality control with him, so we spent a lot of nights together hanging out. Great guy, but he's known as one of the best offensive minds in football. What makes him that way or different, and what does he do that makes him so?
Well, one, I think his knowledge of the entire system is so rare. There's plenty of coaches, Jim, they might have had a quarterback background, have good understanding of the passing game. You could put Kyle, he could coach the offensive line, the quarterbacks, the tight ends, the receivers, running backs, any of that position. He would coach it like an expert. And that's not normal in an offensive coordinator or a defense coordinator. There's a specialty that they had. It might have been he was a secondary coach in my background, defensive line, or quarterback coach that did that. But his ability to talk, the run game, the formations, the whole system, that was something when I first got with him in 2015 that I was just so impressed by, like hearing him talk to the line coach the same way he was talking to the receiver coach, to the quarterback coach. And then I thought he really does a good job game planning, Jim. That's, like during the week, this is what we're seeing, this is how we're going to get. What would be the look? What's the indicator? How would we teach off of that? So I think those two things make him such an elite coach. The guys that can find the matchup and the guys that can really know how to work somebody over in the system.
Sure. No, and to your point too, he grew up around it, right? His dad, a legendary coach, and his dad. I used to hear about he had a photographic memory. The dad could see things and call plays and do stuff. So Kyle's from that same cloth. So I'm sure he's done
100%.
well. And I'm happy for him.
Kind of recall, dude.
The recall. It's crazy. I didn't get that, but
no, I didn't either, but I wish
I've been
I
hitting
had
head a few times. So
yeah, I was didn't have that. I definitely am envious when I see it.
Yeah, no, and the next guy, Raheem Morris, right? Raheem on that same staff was Raheem. He was the defensive quality control, so we all ran together. Raheem, smooth guy, sharp guy, can talk. Guys relate well to him. I think he's had a couple opportunities and done well, and he's out there with Kyle now too. So as a DC, right? So what are your thoughts on Raheem? And here's a question. Answer that question first. I guess I got another one to follow up.
Okay, well. He is, like we were talking about Kyle, elite in terms of teaching the knowledge. Raheem's superpower, man, was his ability to connect. And he could be a receiver coach, DB coach, head coach, D coordinator, any of it. His ability to push, to get in, to get you at your best is so rare. And that's something that I remembered from him way back when I was first starting coaching. He was playing. And so I coached him at Hofstra, and then we coached together there, and then we both went to the NFL and came back to coach together. But his ability to connect and bring people together, Jim, it is truly rare. And he's quick on his feet. He can think, offensively, defensively. But that ability to bring people together, that is his superpower. Man, does he have it.
Yeah, he was great. That staff I was on too. Mike Tomlin was the DB coach. Raheem was his assistant. So we had all kinds of good stuff going on. But Raheem, what type of player was Raheem? Because I know you guys were at Hofstra. Joe Gardy was the coach, right? Or one of the coaches. And I know his son Dave. Good people.
Yeah, and so Rob was an excellent free safety. We had another safety that he played with by that guy who played in the NFL for 10 or 11 years, Lance Schulters. Oh, yeah. And the two of those together, man, they were a handful. And we'd put Lance down near the line of scrimmage, more like in a Cam Chancellor role. And Raheem would be in the middle of the field. And he could have called the defense then, Jim, honestly. He had that type of insights and awareness and could give recall quickly about what would happen. But that's the type of player he was. So you knew that when the playing career would one day be done, this guy would be a natural as a coach. He could teach it, he could talk it. And not all great players can do that. And so he had that ability to say, okay, this is what we need to do. Take away the fluff. This is what we got to get done. And he's just been remarkable at that. So he's one of my favorite people in the whole world. I've known him for, I guess close to 30 years, and I love him.
Yeah, great guy, great guy. He's a fun energy to him, always upbeat.
Yep.
I've never seen him down, which is great.
Yeah, there are very few bad days, and he is. But he's got just this rare ability to bring people together, and he'll do a fantastic job with Kyle.
Sure, sure. Now, switching gears to Super Bowls, Coach. Now, listen, you played 3 Super Bowls. Unbelievable. I mean, the highest to high, right? I mean, to get there, I was around the NFL for 14 years, never got to a Super Bowl. Obviously, that was what everyone's trying to do. Highly competitive thing. You won one, Seattle. I was at that game, by the way, out in New York, right? It was a Super Bowl in New York City.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was snowing. I remember it snowed after. I got snowed in the next day. I was on the business side of the Buccaneers then, but great game. You guys demolished the Broncos. It was awesome, right?
I was worried because it was. They said it was going to snow, and then the day of the game, it was super nice. And here we are playing Peyton Manning, and it's like, shit, man, I thought it was going to snow. And these guys had this prolific offense, but yeah, it was a fantastic game all the way around.
Yeah, I remember. I think one of the snaps went over his head, or
as a snap of the game.
Yeah, right. As a former center, I was like, "Oh man, the Super Bowl right over the head, man. That's got to hurt." But so then here's the other thing. I know the other 2 games, literally one play in either of those games, you'd be a 3-time Super Bowl winner, right? I mean, you could probably go back and look that so close. It's such a fine line, and so some adversity, right? So that you win one, which is great. You don't win 2 others that could have easily went the other way. How do you again? I'm very envious of that. That you made it there. It's a huge accomplishment. A lot of people walking this planet will never get to the Super Bowl, whether as a fan, as a player, as a coach. You were there 3 times, and what did you learn from that? How did you become a better coach that helps you today, going through all that?
Yeah, for sure. And you don't really get to demonstrate that you are better until you're in that exact scenario. So we twice in Seattle and once in Atlanta, and so the lessons that you want to take, man, you want to pull those forward with you. You don't want to live in the past and like mope about it, but you do want to, bring those lessons forward. And so whether that's a lesson regarding a game management, a play selection, a use of a player, those come, with battling and great competition. And in both instances against New England and their system, like this is high coaching as you can get, man. So to go against them, to understand what it's like, be in that moment, it's competing at the very highest level. And that is what you always want to be a part of, right, Jim? To say, hey, this is where you go at the highest level, go battle for it. And it's a competitor's life, man. Sometimes, you get knocked on your ass and you get back up off the mat, but you do need to pull the lessons forward. When that time comes, what will you do differently? And it's all like most great things, like leading up to the game, the journey, the people that you're going with. But yeah, definitely has a scar that you want to take the lessons from, for damn sure.
No, hey, congratulations and all. But I had a old line coach, Steve Marshall, used to say to me, "It ain't a shame to get knocked down; it's a shame to stay down." So
you got that right.
Keep getting up and fighting. But good stuff. Switching gears, track and field. I looked it up. So you threw the discus, the hammer, the shot put, right? You set records with the hammer. Tell me about that. And how did that help you with football? As a player, I guess, in high school.
Yep. And so in high school, like in New Jersey, we had indoor track, outdoor track. And so I did those. And then going to college, I enjoyed track and field. It was like the exact opposite of where I loved so much about football, of the team. And you've had these games where you might have played well and the team lost, or you played poorly and the team won. And track and field was just the opposite, man. And it was like, how are you going to go? And there was easy, let's go right down the road a half hour, go against somebody else and see where you stand. And so I think came to find, man, I love competing. And that's like kind of what I know most about myself. And so that's probably what I love most about track and field. It's like, man, big meets to go, and whether it was pen relays or big meets to say, man, like go test yourself, see where you're at. So I liked pushing to see where that would go. Ultimately, I knew I wanted to teach and coach. So going to college, I was going to get into education and, probably teach, elementary school and coach high school football and high school track. but getting into, college coaching and football earlier, I didn't do that. But man, I had a blast doing it. And so even now today, I still enjoy following it. So when it's the U.S. Track and Field Championships, usually in June, or when the Olympics come around, man, do I enjoy watching these guys battle.
It's funny. Same thing. I love it too. I played football, basketball, and track in high school. All the football coaches coached track, but I got into it. And we didn't have the hammer, but we had a javelin. So I threw the javelin. I threw the shot and the disc too. But to your point, team sport. Now this one was all on me at this point, right? I enjoyed that part. I was competing with myself and the other competitors, but I want to see if I could get better, throw it further, and then watching that thing sail sometimes. It was great. And the meets were great. Physical people, guys, girls walking around, and you could go watch the other events and see everybody do it. It's a great sport that, obviously it's an Olympic sport, but I think it's a great sport.
And you probably were like me, you connected with other people that you wouldn't have normally, like through college of, the track and field teams. I might have not met some of the same people had I not done that. And so like some of those relationships that you build were different and fun. And so it was just honestly, like a great balance for a competitor. And I would just recommend it to anybody that's, whether they're in high school, to play another sport, just for that sake of competing, man. There's training and there's competing. And like the competing part where it counts and you're keeping score, man, that's where it's at.
Yeah, no, it's a historical sport, right? Obviously, one of the first Olympic sports and all that stuff going all the way back. But switching to leadership, Dan, what separates a good leader from a great leader?
Well, I would say authentic is the first thing that came to mind when you asked that, Jim, just to make sure that leader is going to have no gap in what he says and what he does. If you're going to stand out there and say, this is what we need to do, you also need to be somebody that's out front doing those things. If you're not, it kind of can go on hollow ears, and we've all been around enough teammates that might say something and say, man, you didn't do that yesterday. And so those are the things I would say, man, make sure that there's no gap in what you say and what you actually do. And I think any good leader, man, they have good standards. They don't give out, false praise if it's not there, and making sure that if this is what we say we want to do, I'm going to be the one to set the standard about what that looks like, and then give feedback to people to make sure, hey, this was excellent. If we could add this to it, I think you'd really be onto something special. Or, hey, Jim, I think you missed the mark on this sale. Let's go back and find out why. And so you don't have to be an asshole to give somebody feedback. But if you want to lead, you better be able to give insights to get people better. I think that's what I learned early on in coaching in the NFL. Didn't matter where you came from. If it was from my instance, coming from a small school to first start at the 49ers. All right, if Dan knew what he was doing and could get me better, they were going to follow and do that. And so that helped. That was a good lesson to say, man, it doesn't matter where you come from. If this person can help get them better, you'd be surprised how many people want to get back in line, spend some extra time with you to do that.
Sure. And now you got a little lightning round here. Just some quick wrapping up last questions. Pete Carroll, what made him so great?
I'd say relentless competitor. He just didn't back off, Jim. And the messaging was so consistent about that.
Awesome. Toughest quarterback to prepare for?
There's a million of them. I would say, how about I give a few? Can I do that?
Sure.
I would say some combination of Rodgers and Brady and Breeze. Breeze, I played a lot just from New Orleans to, Atlanta, obviously, Green Bay and the NFC. I was in, from Atlanta to, others to, that would have been one. And then Brady certainly been the biggest games. But those have been the three that absolutely in a group of a lot. As a defensive coach, those three definitely kept me up the most.
Yeah, a lot of talent there. So favorite stadium to play on the road when you're playing
on the road? That's a great one, man. I think Seattle's cool. I think it's loud. They're juiced up. I love Green Bay. Same thing, especially if it's in the in the fall or the winter and a game there. But those would be two that come as a road team. I always like going back to MetLife or Giant Stadium, as you and I would know it. I grew up in New Jersey, so that would be those would be my three.
Sure. Favorite teammate or teammates that you had when you were playing? Or
yeah, man. Again, we talked about him earlier, but Cam Chancellor was certainly one. Bobby Wagner as a coach, man, did I have as much gratitude for him about standards and commitment and sacrifice. So those would be two. Bobby here the last few years at Washington, Cam prior to that. from an absolute like savage of a competitor, Julio Jones in Atlanta, and then from like a toughness standpoint, Matt Ryan, man. Like this is like we talked about, like with Joe Gibbs and quarterback for 6 years, getting to coach Matt and seeing how tough he was. Like, man, I respected the hell out of him.
Sure, sure. Best advice you ever received?
I'll say, hey Dan, do it your way. Like don't try to do it in a different fashion or a different way. It'll come off, not being you. You got good principles. You know what to do. So I would say, like, make it authentic to who you are.
Great advice. I remember I was coming out as a senior in college. It made me think of it. There was a scout, I don't know who it was for the Giants. He grabbed me. He said, "Hey, listen." He goes, "Jim, don't try to be anyone else. Be the best you can be. Be the best Jim Pyne can be." And
it worked out for you, bud.
Yeah, it worked out. I guess in closing,
not comparing as much.
Yeah,
like,
right.
I've missed some jobs. I've missed them. I wish I could do this. How come I'm not a coordinator? Man, if you like really enjoy and get after it of doing what you're doing, I found so many things came after that. Like I was 10 years a defensive line coach in the NFL. I wanted to be a coordinator. Well, I went to University of Florida for 2 years. I was a coordinator. Then, okay, is this all there was? Is that what I was all stressed out about, to do that job? But then got to Seattle, got to be a head coach in Atlanta, Dallas, back to here. So I would just encourage people, man, like I know there can be some, what can I do this in 2 years or 3 years? Man, like kicking ass at what you're doing. There's a lot of fun in that too.
That's right. Yeah, go all in and throw yourself in and just do the best you can. If you're a youth coach, be the best youth coach and do the best. And someone will notice, and your time will come, right? So
it will. And I spent too much time worrying about what I need to be doing or what's ahead. And man, just enjoy it and like absolutely go after it. And you'll be surprised. Like so many good things will come your way.
So last question: if someone asks one of your players 20 years from now, tell me about Dan Quinn, what would you want them to say?
I would say, man, the best time I ever had playing football was the years I spent with DK. We got better. Like he demanded that, our improvement, and we were really connected as a team. So that's what I would hope they'd say.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Hey, Coach, really thanks a lot. Really appreciate it. And
always, brother.
Have you on down the road or something. But best of luck at training camp this season. Go get them. You're a winner, and I know great things are ahead. So all the best. Appreciate it.
Likewise, Jim. Get after, bud.
Thank you. Take care.
Yeah.